You are not behind. Look, I know it doesn't feel that way. You're probably working harder than people like your parents ever did. You're on money that 20 years ago would have meant that you'd made it. And somehow you still get to the end of the month wondering where it all went. 60 grand now feels like 30. That isn't you being bad with money. You haven't failed some test that everyone else has quietly passed. The goalposts moved while you were still sprinting at where they used to be. And nobody blew the whistle to tell you. Look, it's a bit like training for months to step up and take a perfect penalty, only to find out that someone's quietly widened the pitch and shifted the net back 10 yards while you weren't even looking. You didn't get worse. The sort of target did. So give me a few minutes and I'll prove the actual maths, because it genuinely is harder than it was. Let's start with the one number that everyone treats as the finish line. 100 grand salary, 6 figures, right? Rich. That £100,000 mark, the one that the tax system literally uses to decide whether you count as a high earner, that was drawn up in 2010. And here's the part that should make you a lot less cross with yourself. It hasn't moved since. 16 years frozen. To simply keep pace with the rising cost of everything, that line would now need to sit at around £157,000 today, just to keep pace. So when you now earn £100,000, it doesn't feel anything like the £100,000 that you might have pictured as a kid or when you started out in your career. It's not your imagination. In real terms, you're roughly where a £64,000 earner stood back then in 2010. Same money on paper, a completely different life. And that's one of the goalposts, painted on a wall in 2010 and never repainted. And housing is where it also really bites. Look, in the late 1990s, the average home cost about 3.5 times the average wage. 3.5. Today, it's around 8 times and well past 12 times in London. Look, put it another way. Back in 1999, the overwhelming majority of areas in the country had homes that were selling for around 5 times earnings. Under that. Today, that's true of what? Like a handful of places in the UK? Housing hasn't been this expensive relative to what people actually earn for about 150 years. It's crazy. So when buying a proper family home or even just getting on the property ladder to start with feels like some sort of crazy pipe dream, it's not that you didn't save hard enough or do the right thing. The thing that you've saved for has been sprinting away from you your whole entire adult life. And then I would say there is the cruelest twist of all, hidden right at that £100,000 line. There is a stretch of income between £100,000 and roughly £125,000 where your tax-free allowance starts getting clawed back. And remember, your tax-free allowance is just that 12.5 grand or so that you can earn and pay no tax on at the start. Here's the catch. Above 100,000, every extra £2 you earn strips £1 of that allowance away. So a pound that used to be tax-free at the start of your earnings ladder now gets taxed too. You are hit twice on the new money that you're earning in the top and the allowance that you've just lost at the bottom. The effective rate on that slice of money is about 60%. Call it 62% once you factor in things like national insurance, and that has a bite out of it as well. A pay rise that is mostly a mirage at this level. One of my mates recently got that bump up to over 100 grand in his salary, and he was like, look, can we sit down and work out some stuff? So we were working out his take-home pay position. And halfway through, he looks up at me and he's like, I think I'm hardly better off. And I'm thinking, well, I know it is a bit of a dangerous thing, but that can't be right. But then in his specific situation, we looked at childcare. Because the moment you cross £100,000 worth of earning, even a single pound, a parent with free childcare and support worth £20,000 disappears. Just absolutely disappears. So his pay rise had quietly made his family poorer. And I see this constantly in my one-to-one coaching. Someone will turn up, glowing, they've just got a promotion, we run the real numbers, and this is what it shows. The sad fact is that there are 2 million people that are now caught in or near this trap. A thing that was originally aimed at the genuinely wealthy back in 2010, and now it routinely snares normal people, teachers, GPs, people who do not feel rich when you speak to them, because by any sort of honest measure, they're not. Look, £100,000 of income doesn't make you rich anymore. It just makes you rich enough to get taxed like you are. So that's the maths. And it just doesn't add up the way that it used to. And once you see that a bit more clearly, the shame just quietly drains out of the whole situation. You were playing the game that you were handed, and the rules just changed underneath you. Which brings me to the old school advice, because the advice didn't get the memo either. Look, there's a whole genre of money wisdom, essentially, that's built around cutting back, right? You've heard it all before. Skip the coffee, make your lunch at home, no avocado toast, cancel all your subscriptions. And look, okay, there is nothing wrong with not wanting to waste money and being sensible about what you're doing. We've all sat there feeling guilty about a £4 flat white, while the rent or the mortgage quietly takes £1,800 a month and the nursery takes £1,500 a month more. The coffee and the avocado toast isn't the leak. Fretting about coffee with all of that sort of stuff going on is like trying to bail out a boat with water with a teaspoon, ignoring the massive hole in the back of the boat. The deeper problem is that we were handed a saving mindset for what's become an inflation world, and those are not the same game. Here's what I mean. The instinct that most of us were raised with is this: money goes in bank, bank is safe, safe is good, right? That's pretty much what you've heard before. And cash does feel safe. The number on the screen never goes down, but that's exactly what makes it so sneaky. It's like kind of holding an ice cube in your fist. It looks like it's still there at first, but it's quietly getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Cash doesn't lose its value in some crazy stock market crash that you'd notice on a screen. It goes in silence. Look, with the base rate where it is currently, the interest rate that the Bank of England sets for what you can roughly get on your money, you might earn 4 and a bit% on your savings. But after inflation's eaten a good chunk of that, and if you're a high earner and you only get that 500 quid savings allowance interest free before the tax man gets his cut too, that's not a particularly pleasant picture. Meanwhile, the things that you're actually trying to buy now and in the future, things like property and the stock market, keep getting more expensive faster than your cash is growing. So you can do everything right. You can save your money, you can pile it all into a savings account and feel responsible and still slip backwards. Not because you did the wrong thing, because the right thing from 30 years ago is exactly the wrong thing now. So the question is, how do you actually play this version of the game? Well, there are 3 big changes. The first and the obvious one is tax. Look, you can't control the economy. You can't unfreeze all of those thresholds that we hear about. But you've got far more control over your tax than almost anyone tells you. So remember that 60% brutal zone between 100 and 125-ish, roughly £1,000? You can turn that on its head. The best weapon for that is a pension. Any money you put in is what we call a taxable income reducer. It pulls down what's called your adjusted net income. That is just the figure that the tax man actually judges you on each year. So a £10,000 pension chunk carves that off essentially, and the bar drops down. So if you earn 100 grand and you put £10,000 into a pension, in his eyes, the almighty tax man's eyes, you've actually theoretically only earned 90. Again, you drop back under that £100,000 line, and the allowance that you were losing comes straight back pound for pound. That same 60% that kind of mugged you off on the way up now works for you in exactly the same way, but opposite. A chunk of pension that effectively cost you a fraction of what it's worth to you. For a lot of people, that is truly the single most powerful lever that they're just not pulling, and you can do it via salary sacrifice. This is essentially where you agree with your employer to take a little bit less pay into your pocket every single month and have them put it straight into your pension instead. Just a quick note on this one. From 2029, you may have seen this, the national insurance saving on big salary sacrifice contributions is being trimmed down a bit, but the income tax saving, and that's the part that springs you out of all of those traps and really moves the lever, is untouched. So the move here still absolutely works. The second change is what I call getting on the train, right? If those goalposts are moving, things like property and the stock market, they keep running ahead of cash, then the answer isn't to chase them on foot. That's not the way. It's to own things that move. Look, you can't outrun a train by sprinting down the platform. You need to get on board and let it carry you at the same speed. In short, what that means is owning assets. Things whose value actually climbs over time, rather than sitting in cash and watching that gap widen. So I really want you to start thinking like this. Start converting your hard-earned income into ownership of assets. Ownership of assets is what is going to close that gap. Things like property is definitely one, but so is things like a global index fund investing in the stock market. A global index fund is just a single pot that spreads your money across a tiny slice of thousands of the world's biggest companies at once. So you're never really betting on one of them, you're betting on all of them. It's how I invest my money and my clients' money. And if it helps, you can watch that play out in real time. This is what my investment community beyond the market is for. Links in the description below. Would be very happy to have you there. And thankfully, there is a tax-free carriage on that train that you can do it in. An ISA. Remember, an ISA is just an account where any interest or gains that you make are completely tax-free. You can put in up to £20,000 a year into one. The point isn't to gamble here. It's to stop standing still whilst everything else moves forward. And the third one is a change that I think just actually sets you free. And it's the one that nobody sells you because there's no product attached to it. You get to decide where your goalposts are. Think about what has been happening the whole time. You've been chasing a finish line, rich enough, made it, that somebody else has painted for you. And that keeps getting dragged further and further away the second you even get remotely near it. There's a reason that people are quietly turning down promotions now to stay under that £100,000 line. Chase a target that constantly moves and you'll run yourself into the ground and still feel behind, because behind is the only thing a moving target will ever let you feel. So stop running at other people's targets, at other people's finish line. Work out your own. Work out yours. Not more, not whatever the bloke next door has, an actual number. The income, the savings, the life that means you can actually breathe. What is your enough? Because the day that you can actually physically name that, and it's something that I always get my one-to-one clients to do, something flips, something changes. The goalposts stop moving. Not because the economy changed, but because you stopped letting someone else hold the goalposts. And if pinning that number down feels easier said than done, I've built a free app that does it basically for you. You put in the life that you actually want and the income levels that you need to achieve it, and it does everything for you. It's a way to paint your own goalpost instead of chasing somebody else's. So the link's in the description below. Download it for free and it goes straight into your inbox. You, my friend, are not behind. You weren't even running the right race to begin with. A race whose rules changed while you weren't told about it. And the only finish line is one that's only going to matter is that one that you painted in the ground yourself. Now, if you actually want to win in this whole race, you'll need to start investing. I've been managing people's investments or savings for over 15 years. And there's one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people will pick the wrong place to start saving or investing their money in the first place, which is why I really think that you should watch this video here next, because if you choose the wrong type of account, the wrong type of ISA account specifically, you could undo some really good work. So give it a click, we'll go through it all, and I'll see you there.